Well, hey, I'm Dammit, and this is the first of a series of videos that will explain how to train with the First Church of David Bowie Phonomantic Rite. Today I'm going to cover some basic concepts, but first, a little background. In the summer of 2017, I had a series of intense visionary experiences in which I downloaded the metaphorical schematics for a religion of the science-fictional future. The central ceremony of this religion was something I've come to call entheotainment, meaning a theatrical spectacle designed to create in its audience an apprehension of the sacred. At one point in my visions, I saw a sold-out stadium, tens of thousands of people, singing and dancing along with a stage show that was like a cross between the Cirque du Soleil and an old-school Van Halen concert. But they weren't just watching the show. They all had roles to play. Their participation was vital to its success, and every one of them, I was given to understand, was on a heroic dose of the substantia. Substantia is the Latin word for substance. I use it as a euphemism for my psychedelic medicine of choice. So yeah, they were tripping balls, but they were also able to conduct themselves with perfect self-control and focus their attention on their tasks. If their inner experience took a difficult turn, they knew how to handle it. They didn't let their private travails impose on anybody else's experience. They kept their shit together and soldiered on until the job was done. When I tried to imagine a society that could produce so many people who were so disciplined, yet also wild and adventurous enough to take part in such an outlandish practice, I knew that that was where I wanted to live. So for the last 3.5 years, I've been trying to put those plans I downloaded into action. I wanted to create that future. So I developed a prototype entheotainment I called the First Church of David Bowie's Shamanic Cabaret. Entheotainment is based on a practice called phonomancy. Phonomancy is the art and science of entering visionary states of consciousness via a combination of high-dose substantia, meditation techniques, and singing and dancing along to your favorite songs. People have long known that music can have a profound effect on one's psychedelic experience. Phonomancy takes it a step further by recognizing it's not the music so much as how the music makes you feel that affects you. The stronger the feeling, the deeper you go. To perform phonomancy is to use music to consciously, intentionally amplify specific emotional states in order to access higher planes of existence and communicate with the entities that one encounters there. In short, with enough practice, you can talk one-on-one with the deity of your choice. A phonomantic rite is a series of acts of phonomancy. It's a way to structure a psychedelic experience by imposing upon it a narrative structure. Narratives are essentially emotional experiences set in a particular order. A good narrative provides catharsis. That is, it builds a tension of strong emotions, then offers the relief of release. A good example of narrative structure is the hero's journey. That term might be familiar to you from books like Joseph Campbell's The Power of Myth. The hero's journey is a template that forms the basis for stories from many times and places, from the Greek myth of Jason and the Golden Fleece to the American myth of Luke Skywalker and the Force. For each stage of the hero's journey, there is a related emotion. The journey starts with boredom or humdrum mundanity, then segues into the surprise and excitement of being called on a quest, then moves into wonder as you enter a new, unsuspected, magical world, and etc. and etc. At first, the Phonomantic Rite was a Spotify playlist, songs that inspired specific kinds of emotional response, which I ordered according to the hero's journey. There was a part that was all heavy rock music. I called that the stereo myth. There was a part that was almost all pop songs with female vocalists. That was the transcendental disco. And then there was a part called the Anne Frank Working that was based on the songs of an indie rock band called Neutral Milk Hotel. I'll go into detail about these in subsequent videos. The net result of going through all these emotions in sequence is, as I mentioned, cathartic. When you experience catharsis on a high dose of substantia, you are launched into a headspace where God is an absolute, unquestionable reality. If the term God makes you uncomfortable, feel free to substitute your term of choice, the divine mind, Brahman, the void, transcendental reality, whatever. But let's be clear on one point. You are an aspect of it, not the other way around. And in one sense, the divine is utterly alien, omniscient, but as uncaring of you as you are of an epidermal cell deep in the crack of your ass. But in another, it's a person. You are its favorite thing in all existence, and it wants very much to communicate with you. That experience of communication is the ultimate goal of every real religion. It's the most profound experience you can have. It was in this state that I received the plans for how I could make this experience available to others, with the specific goal of ultimately finding a way we could do it together, in public, to start laying the groundwork for realizing that vision of the future I had. The first time I tried to get other people to perform the Phonomantic Rite with me, I realized they were having a hard time figuring out what the target emotion of each song was. So I started improvising a story that served as an explanation. Over time, the story grew to explain certain metaphysical concepts. When received in an altered state of consciousness, it primes you for certain kinds of experiences. Eventually, I filmed myself reciting this narrative and made music videos for each song that contained images that were intended to reinforce the participants' ability to hit the target emotions. These were gathered into a series of movies that are the foundation of my public-facing version of the Phonomantic Rite, which I call the first Church of David Bowie shamanic cabaret. But they can also be used when working solo. Under the correct conditions, they'll deliver an experience that's like a cross between the Ludovico technique from A Clockwork Orange and the super soldier creation process from the movie Captain America. I'm not kidding. It's incredibly intense. Do not attempt this if you have any history of mental illness or if you have any doubts about your courage or adaptability. Consider yourself warned. But if you do try out the Phonomantic Rite, like it, and then practice with it regularly, you will develop what I only half-jokingly refer to as cognitive superpowers. You'll be on your way to becoming a shamanic superhero, the kind of highly self-actualized individual the world is going to need if we're to survive the trials to come during the next couple hundred years. I've uploaded these movies to YouTube for anybody to use. And so that's why I'm making these instructional videos. I want you to understand how to use the Phonomantic Rite correctly in order to achieve the promised results. I also want to explain the principles on which it's based, so that others can innovate on them. This is just one version of the Phonomantic Rite. I've begun developing another, and I fully expect others to invent their own. I want them to. I want artists to piece together Phonomantic Rites based on their own tastes and experience, and then package them for public consumption as entheatainments, so that others can experience, for a little while, the divine the way they do. I imagine a future in which on any given Saturday night, one could go into a nightclub that is also a church and have a mind-blowing experience of the sacred, one as unique as the person who created it. I also want to promote a broader concept, that with proper preparation and progression, you can learn to use psychedelics skillfully. You can actively bend the psychic and somatic energies they unleash toward realizing your own specific goals. In doing so, you are effectively training as a shaman. As I define it, shamanism is a set of techniques that allow you to access other levels of reality and deal with what you find there. Wielded with enough skill, it can create change back here in the everyday world, whether that means summoning rain, healing someone's stomach ailments, or returning with transformational ideas. If we as a society are going to work with psychedelics, we're going to need to evolve a shamanic tradition, one based in our own culture, not simply aping the practices of others. We need to do this because psychedelics eventually reveal that there's much more to the world than our current materialist worldview admits. We live in a psychic ecology, an endless ocean of consciousness, and like in any ocean, there's all kind of flora and fauna, and some of them want to eat you. Shamanism is not just for our brothers and sisters in the Peruvian jungle or the Siberian steppe. It's a universal human capacity. It's ultimately just learning the means to safely navigate those lovely and treacherous waters. My work is not intended to be the last word, just an initial contribution to that development effort. Got all that? Okay, that's the end of part 1. If you're interested in learning more, be on the lookout for part 2, in which I'll explain the basic ritual structure of the rite. See you then.
I'm an alligator. I'm a mama, papa coming for you.